So the rule of thumb is similar to the path that I followed. You it's okay to swerve. It's okay to change, and it's okay to do multiple things at once. So, you know, if you don't know your path and it's not you're not someone who sort of has it all figured out from the get-go, that's okay. Um, you will learn from your experiences. The trick really is to go get those experiences and not be afraid of them. So you have to kind of go out there and try things, and it's okay to fail, but try things and get exposed. And it's that exposure that ultimately, will drive and help you find your passion.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, if I don't get too tongue-tied, Matthew Asbell. And Matthew started his journey, grew up in Philly and went to private school and then went off to college and studied psychology, graduated and followed, I think, a girlfriend to Tennessee and then intending to be a singer and songwriter. Did that for a period of time and then decided to move back and went to med school. During that time, continued to write and record that music as well, and did some releasing of those recordings, and so didn't end up finishing up the medical path. And then afterwards, had a degree of success and shifted over to doing some contracts and licensing, but which prompted him to go to the law school and go into IP. So, with that much as a quick introduction, welcome on the podcast, Matthew.
Thanks very much for having me. That was my life in fast forward. I felt like flashed before my eyes.
Well, it can have the innate ability to compact everybody's life into 30 or 45 seconds, so it works
That's
out well.
impressive.
But no, let's why don't we rewind and unpack that a little bit? So tell us a little bit about how your journey got started growing up in Philly.
Oh, well, I don't know what's particularly interesting about it. I grew up outside of Philadelphia in a place called Lower Merion, where Kobe Bryant was from. Went to a school called Episcopal Academy, which was interesting because actually I'm Jewish, so 1/3 of the school was Jewish at an Episcopalian school where we went to church a couple times a week. But that was pretty cool. I think the coolest thing about that school though was it it taught me how to look at seemingly unrelated subject matter and find ways to relate it. And I think that's always served me really well throughout my whole career.
No, that makes sense. So, so you grew up in Philly. I think you said or you went to private school before going off to university or going to college. Now you went off to study psychology. So maybe kind of where did you go and kind of what motivated you or kind of set you down that path of studying psychology?
Well, in high school, I was really into electronic music. I was making my own electronic music. Actually, was the musical director for the school's production of Godspell that year, which went over really, really well. And I did it all on my computer. It
Hmm.
was really cool. And so thought maybe I was going to go to college for music and music composition. And at the same time, my mother's a doctor. I thought I was going to study biology. So I kind of wanted to do that at the same time and do a double major somewhere. So
Hmm.
I went to schools that would support sort of both interests in science and arts and ended up at Carnegie Mellon. Um, Initially as a double major, biology and music composition, and they made me pick one. They
Hmm.
made me pick a home school, and I was very bothered by that. I didn't really feel at home in either one. So ultimately, going through a year or two of school, I decided I didn't want to be either, and I was much more interested in the human brain and the way we perceived things, and decided I was going to study psychology and perception, and ended up graduating from Carnegie Mellon with that degree.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. And so now you're coming out, and I think during that period, the classic love story, so to speak. You met a girl during school and decided that you were going to follow her as she followed her dreams, and that took you to Tennessee. Maybe putting too many words in your mouth, but maybe walk us through kind of what was that evolution as you finished up the degree.
Yeah, so I spent my free time doing a lot of songwriting, in that last few years of college, and that particular girlfriend at the time was a singer and a songwriter and a theatrical person, and she had gotten a job at Opryland USA at the time. That was the amusement park in Nashville where she was going to be doing shows and whatever. And I didn't know what I was going to do when I graduated. I just really felt lost. I was thinking about, going off and working on a ship and swabbing the deck somewhere. But she had this cool job and I had nothing better to do. So we said, all right, we'll go. Let's go check it out. And I really liked Nashville. Nashville's such a cool city for songwriters. It seems like everybody in Nashville's a songwriter. And you go into these bars and clubs and coffee shops, and there's always someone who's a songwriter, or they have these songwriting writers nights where even famous writers of songs would who you wouldn't know because they were the writer but not the performer, would come and perform a song that they had written, um, and it would be really moving. And so I thought this is really cool. I think I would like to stay here. Maybe I'll be a songwriter. Um, Ended up looking to pay the rent, looking at jobs on Music Row on the publishing houses in Nashville, and I went from one to the other down the street, cold calling, essentially walking in with my resume, trying to say, you ought to hire me so I could work for you, and nobody did that. And I said, well, gee, maybe I ought to, like, polish up my business skills, my resume, my administrative resume, and find a job. And went to what was at Kinko's Copies at the time. I guess it's FedEx Kinko's these days. Um, and the guy in front of me in line was a psychiatrist. He was making photocopies of these logos. He had all these logos he had drawn out for his brand new practice focused on attention deficit disorder. And he turned around and he asked me which one I liked. We end up getting in a conversation. I end up have talking to him for like an hour, going back to his office, and ended up hiring me, and I worked there for a year.
Gotcha. No, that sound like a good evolution of the journey, and hey, it sounds like a good way to supplement what you are doing now. Filling us in just and rewinding just a little bit. What happened with the love story? Did live happily ever after, move there the first day and break up and never see her again, or somewhere in between? Or help us. I got it's one of those where you just got to know. It's kind of like leaving the cliffhanger in the movie and not knowing what happened. So fill us in on that a bit.
So, that lasted for a while, and um, after I left Nashville and moved to Philadelphia, which I guess we'll get to, um, we um, we continued in to some degree to have a relationship. We had somewhat of a professional relationship in that we started to record music that we had written. I had co-written with her. Some I had written myself. Some she had written herself. And we were recording that music together, and we went through that whole process, released that record, and it ended after that, essentially.
Gotcha. So it was a good launch into your music career and had a good relationship for a period of time and then parted ways. Now getting into now the moving and or furthering the music career. So I think you kind of alongside of that, and you touched on it maybe a bit. You also at some point went off to do medical school and then doing the record in that period of time. So how did you kind of balance, music and medical schools? Those don't necessarily inherently seem to jive, but kind of how did that play out?
Yeah, so it's all about conflict, right? I mean, I had this science and arts when I was going to college in Nashville. It was okay. I'm trying to, be a songwriter, and I'm working for a psychiatrist, and And while I was there, the psychiatrist, like I learned a lot about what he did. He focused on attention deficit disorder, which is common in a lot of artistic and creative people. So, I started to see some parallels in my family, maybe in me. Um, and I ultimately thought, well, I can do this job. I ought to do that. I ought to do what he does. But leaving Nashville and leaving the whole dream of being the songwriter was really hard. So while I was trying was thinking about this and decided to apply to med school, I also ultimately decided that I was going to record all this music that I had written. And so I had to find a way to do that. And the way I ultimately did that was I set aside one weekend every month, and I would go to a recording studio every month and lay down some tracks on those various songs in between all my studies, such that by the time I got through the end of the second year of med school, the record was done. And then I hit a crossroads.
So one follow-up, just the record now, is this all of you and or singer, songwriter doing it all on your own, or did you have a band or people you collaborated with? Just more out of curiosity, because med school, I'm sure it was a full-time engagement, but it sounds like you're balancing kind of competing interests and just curious, kind of was to say, what that structure was as far as on the musical aspect, as far as how you were pursuing that.
Sure. I mean, always balancing competing interests, but it was with that girlfriend, that one I had followed to Nashville. And another friend, actually a few other friends. And so, I was like a songwriter on most of the songs. I played piano and guitar and a little bit of percussion. She played piano and sang, and then we hired some musicians, studio musicians to add parts to it. And even I even got to go back to my old high school and involve the high school jazz band and have them come and contribute to get an educational experience in the studio and contribute to the record. So it was pretty balanced. But yeah, competing between med school and the recording studio for sure.
Well, that's awesome. No, it sounds like a fun path to take. So now you were going through medical school. If I remember, you got towards the end, but didn't necessarily take the boards and go through the examination process or that. As you're releasing the record and getting some degree of traction, you decided to pursue that full time. Is that right? Or walk us through that a bit.
More or less. Basically, having finished the record, I had a choice of uh, going back to the third year of medical school, and in order to do that, you have to take this exam, the national boards, right, in order to pass the academic part of med school and go into the practical years where you actually are in the hospitals and stuff, um, or releasing the record, which was a full-time job. I had created my own label. I was doing the radio promotion, I was doing the publicity, and I was doing the booking. So, I mean, I would have like it's like I have these days, as I'm sure you do. Like I have these like 30 client matters of things I've got to do in like no time to do them all. It's really challenging. It was like that. I just had a whole list of I had all these things I had to do for the launch of the record, and there was no way I was going to be able to study for those boards and do the record. And I was young, so I was like, this is the time to try things. I could always go back to med school if it's the thing that I want to do. I wasn't too excited in med school either because I was a little disappointed at how little we know. I mean, we know more now, but there were so many problems, diseases, and issues that people had that had no solution or no real solution. We were treating symptoms. It was disturbing to me. So I released the record and I had some success.
Now, just out of curiosity, when you say some success, is it something that I could go find, I could purchase or listen to, or was it a one-hit wonder or short on the track, or kind of when you say success, kind of what did that look like, or over what kind of period of time as you made that full-time focus?
Well, I guess I defined success at the time as having a feature article in a national publication,
Hmm.
and being on the radio around the country. And that's we had achieved. Um, it was not on Billboard charts or anything of that nature. But people, it was on the radio, it was on the radio in Philadelphia a lot, and people would hear it, and I would hear it. It was pretty cool to hear your own music on the radio. And um, you know, and it was, pe people in the community of that genre of music, which I would call Americana folk pop music. People in that genre knew who I was, and the artist that I was working with, who was my ex-girlfriend. So yeah, so that was some success, I would say.
No, that's awesome, and I don't know that how you define success, or it's different for everybody. But I would certainly, if I heard my, not that I have any musical ability whatsoever. I have other family members that have musical ability. I have absolutely zero, other than I like to listen to music, and so I would be over the moon to even hear it on a local radio, let alone released on a broader scale. So that's awesome. You had that degree of success. Now you're going through all of that, and I think as we chatted a bit before, you kind of got into a lot of contracts and licensing and kind of figuring all that out, and that kind of led you down again a different path into going or looking to pursue things on the legal front.
Yeah, not initially. Initially, what really happened was, as a result of the successes that I described, a lot of the other artists who I was meeting
Mm.
and encountering were asking for assistance with their records. Hey, could you book me? Hey, could you help me release this album? Could you promote the radio on the radio, etc. And so I got into a career lasted about 10 years of managing these other artists, helping to release their records. And I would book them to perform at colleges around the country and then internationally on tours and things of that nature at a very small level, but in coffee shops and things. But one of those artists who I'm still friends with today, and I think is phenomenal. Her name is Edie Carey, and she was getting her music into film and television. So that's when I realized that apparently a lot of people who manage musicians, manage recording artists, have a legal background. I thought, gee, I'm getting these contracts. I'm supposed to negotiate these contracts. I'm supposed to understand these contracts. Maybe I ought to go to law school. So that's what triggered
Mm.
it.
No, that makes perfect sense, and it sounds like a logical jump as you're doing a lot of that work for others, and they're right.
Oh,
Sorry about
you
that. Had
disappeared.
a short technical difficulty. You still there?
Oh, wow. That was interesting. Yeah, you were frozen on the screen and then magically you were walking from off the screen back.
Yeah, had something that or a very rare occasion frozen that periodically has to do it, and the audience gets the live experience of having this recorded without any edits or that. So everybody gets to see me jump off the screen for a second and hop right back in. So didn't mean to interrupt, but no, what I was saying is makes a logical leap. But hey, if I'm doing all this work and or doing reviewing these contracts, I should probably have a better understanding and background as to what I'm looking at and how I'm negotiating. So it sounds like kind of the intent was is to better facilitate you offering a lot of or helping other people within the music industry that took you down the route to going off to law school and kind of studying and getting a better understanding there. Is that about right?
Well, I'm not sure which part got cut off, but I guess if I'm rewinding to make sure I say what I
Sure.
don't know if it's on the recording or not, is that it didn't really happen immediately. Though I was working managing these artists, and one of well, so actually I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused. Let me back up.
Sure.
So as a result of the success on the record that I released, these other artists asked for help with their careers. So that's what I was doing. I did that for about 10 years. And over the course of that 10 years, I got exposed to learn a little bit about copyright law and music law, but I wasn't really involved in that at all or interested in that. One of the artists that I was representing in the latter part of my career, who I'm still friends with today and I think very highly of, her name is Edie Carey. And Edie started to get her music into film and television. At the time, there was a television show called Charmed about these witches,
Mm.
and she had gotten her song onto I think it was onto the opening credits of Charmed, um, and um, and so we got a contract, and she's like, "Well, you're the manager," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't know how to review a contract." Um, and I learned then that apparently most of the people who manage singer-songwriters or manage other types of recording artists have legal backgrounds, have JD degrees, even if they're not practicing law. So that's what prompted me to go to law school.
No, that makes perfect sense. So now, so you go off to law school, you kind of get that experience, that background. Now, did you kind of continue to do that as far as helping others, and providing those services within managing and legal, not or legal and other promoting aspects and doing that, or did you kind of did it push you to shift gears and or build a law practice or become a practicing attorney, or kind of walk us through as you went off to law school, kind of how things evolved?
So I went off to law school thinking I was going to be a music lawyer, and a manager, right? And maybe I would just stay as a manager. I got to say that artist management is not a lucrative profession unless you have a very, very big artist. And it's hard to get a very, very big artist. So I did what I could. It was good. But in law school, I actually, it kind of come full circle because all of that scientific background and medical background and interests and all of that artistic interests, and then coupled that those two coupled with my newfound business interest, having launched my own record label and managed these art singer-songwriters, and I had my own logo and my own brand and etc. All
Mm.
of that said, gee, maybe what you want to do is intellectual property law. And I didn't really know exactly what that was or what qualified me for what, but basically started to explore that in law school and realized that everything that ever was of interest to me somehow was tied into intellectual property law because I was going to either represent artists who had music that was copyright protected, or I was going to represent brand owners who had brands and trademarks, right, that needed to be protected, or I was going to represent innovators in science that were or engineers who were going to create, new inventions. And so
Mm.
for me, this was the only thing that I could do, the only thing I wanted to do, and it was the only way I was going to be a lawyer. Like I did not want to be a lawyer at all, except for the fact that, oh, what I'm doing is protecting the things that people create. I love that.
No, that's awesome. So it sounds like it's been a fun path and a bit of evolution. So kind of with that is the backdrop and with the kind of those details, catch us up kind of where things are at today or how they've further evolved and kind of what you're up to today and kind of yeah, walk us through that a bit, catch us up.
Well, I guess that's where the story gets boring because, at least for the audience, because, having swerved through all of these different paths and, redirecting and reinventing myself in many ways, but then coming full circle and finding something that tied it all together, that's where I stayed. So, I was at a firm that only did intellectual property, and I was there for about 15 years. Um, Before, and I worked my way up as a junior associate, an intern, and then a junior associate, all the way up to a partner, and then moved to a big general practice firm where I was one of several hundred attorneys, but only few of whom did IP,
Mm.
and then more recently moved to a different one. So I'm at my third firm now, but it's still a general practice firm where I am, one of in my firm in this firm, I'm one of very, very many intellectual property attorneys. There's something like 30 or 35 of us. It's kind of nuts. But it's great. because the firm, and then we have all these other areas. So when people have contract issues or trust in estates or labor and employment, I have colleagues that I work with and I get exposed to those areas of law. And now I actually like those things when before I sort of thought, oh, I never want to get involved with that stuff. But my practice is IP, all the time.
Well, sounds like it's been a great evolution and a lot of fun of the fun for the journey along the way. So definitely great to kind of catch up to the present day. So kind of with that is now the backdrop. I always like to as we catch up to the present day to always ask the same couple of questions. So we're going to jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
The worst business decision I ever made. Well, it's kind of funny because like the worst business decision I ever made is also potentially the best business decision I ever made, right? Leaving med school to become an artist manager. Um, like I took something, I mean, from an income perspective, completely affected me. I was struggling. I had to work extra jobs to try to figure out how to stay afloat and afford my rent, and impacted me in a lot of negative ways. Um, and then, when you're working for artists who are not rich, um, yeah, you get a percentage, but a percentage of very little is even littler, right? So getting paid, collecting that money was a big stress. And so learning about that business, I mean, it was a certainly a bad business decision. But it was also really led me and taught me, right, how to think about the business of what I do. And I do that in my law practice. Um, and and to be mindful of, I mean, even there's no such thing as a wrong decision, right? There's just a decision. A decision gets you somewhere along your path, and I don't regret that decision.
No, it makes perfect sense and is insightful in how you walk through things. Second question now that I'd like to ask. So now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting started or is just getting started with a startup or a small business, what would be the one rule of thumb you'd recommend?
Yeah, so the rule of thumb is similar to the path that I followed. You it's okay to swerve. It's okay to change, and it's okay to do multiple things at once. So, you know, if you don't know your path and it's not you're not someone who sort of has it all figured out from the get-go, that's okay. Um, you will learn from your experiences. The trick really is to go get those experiences and not be afraid of them. So you have to kind of go out there and try things, and it's okay to fail, but try things and get exposed. And it's that exposure that ultimately, will drive and help you find your passion.
No, I think that's definitely a great rule of thumb and a great takeaway. So, well, now as we do wrap up towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
So although I'm at a law firm, I do have my own personal website, which is matthewasbell.com. So that's probably the easiest way to find me and to find out stuff about me. Um, and I love to mentor people. I do it all the time, and welcome people to reach out if there are people who are looking for for things in their careers. If there are people who need intellectual property legal help, you're welcome to come to me. But you've got Devin here, so you could go to Devin, and that'd be great. So please feel free. However I can be helpful.
Awesome. I could definitely encourage people to utilize all the resources that are available to them, whether it's self-interested using Miller IP or going to you and getting that career and advice and direction and helping them to make sure that they do well within their startup and their small businesses. Lots of great resources. And so encourage people to reach out to you, connect, expand their network, and otherwise, if nothing else, make a new best friend. So So with that, thank you again, Matthew, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you other listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveunicorn.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And along that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Well, thank you again, Matthew, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate your having me. Great to be here.